So I've been kind of thinking about this for a while, just sort of with the, I don't know, the ecosphere, whatever you want to call it, around Dungeon Tube and the entire TTRPG industry as of late. I've just felt really disillusioned with the direction that they're trying to take this game in. It's just kind of hit me that I think that there's a sort of cultural disagreement or a sort of tonal dissonance that I'm seeing with Dungeons and Dragons 2024 and the promise of what they keep making about the game, really, like what the central ethos of it is. D&D has always historically been this game where you are fantasy characters exploring a dangerous environment, doing dangerous things in order to like be heroes and yada yada yada. And then I keep seeing this time and time again where it seems like Wizards of the Coast is trying to play it too safe, or maybe they would really just be more happy making a cozy core game, whatever it is you want to say. But they keep trying to make this game where it's like, we're going to superpower your characters and then never really challenge them. My only real exposure, I guess, to some of the new content that they've had is the core rulebook, the monster manual, the new Dungeon Master's Guide, yada, 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 and then the Heroes on the Borderlands starter set. Just as a little bit of like background for why I know about this stuff, I got the core rulebook last year after Gen Con, but this year I decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to start up a after-school D&D club, and we're going to run this like Heroes on the Borderlands thing. It sounds like they're trying to say that this is a great introduction for a lot of new players and, you know, yada, yada, yada. We get in on it, and I really tried to handle this in a couple different ways. So I mean, whether or not you want to consider this to be a critique of D&D 2024 or just sort of the way that I went about doing this, I go for it. Or maybe it's a critique of 4th and 5th graders. I don't know. But we get into it, and the first time that we meet up, it's talking about what all the club is going to be and then making your characters. So the starter kit comes with some pre-generated characters as these like tile sheet things, right? They're actually pretty easy to just pop in and play, but honestly, a lot of these kids were wanting to make their own characters that had their own stuff, you know, everything they picked out. They wanted to make it very much me. Not all of them wanted to play fighter, wizard, rogue, or cleric. Some of them wanted to play monk or sorcerer or druid, whatever. Okay, so I took this as a little bit of like field research. Okay, what can we do to get these kids making characters? How long is this going to take in this new system update or whatever? Within about an hour, 3 of the kids had just completely mentally checked out. I was trying to run this as smoothly as I possibly could. If you know anything about me, you know that like, hey, here on the channel, I talk about how easy it is to make characters in certain systems. I know 5th edition, I know D&D 2024. You can tell from my track record as a best-selling homebrewer over on the DM's Guild. Look, guys, I know my shit, all right? I try guiding them through this, but honestly, with the, I guess you could say with the limited attention spans and with the just overwhelming amount of stuff that it took to explain how you make characters or why we do things a certain way, ability scores versus modifiers and yada, 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 it took way too long for us to make any characters where they were going to sit and be happy doing that, right? So most of these kids just wound up writing a class on their sheet, an ancestry, their inventory, and in some cases they picked spells, and other ones they didn't. And these were on some classes that had spell access, wizards and all that stuff, and they were just like, no, that looks like it's too much work. And I'm like, well, wait, this is going to be part of how we make your character, so I'm just going to pick these for you, and then we'll move on to play next week. That took, for the next part, that took me hand entering their character sheets. A couple of kids were also saying that like they would rather just do this on D&D Beyond. And I was like, okay, well, unless you have a tablet or a cell phone here in the D&D club, which here in Oklahoma, they actually banned cell phones from schools. Like students can't bring their cell phones to schools, and there's no way they're going to let them have a tablet there either. That wasn't really an option. Some of the kids were upset that they couldn't use D&D Beyond on my smart board because, tried to be accommodating, took their character sheets, put them into a form-fillable PDF, got them ready to go, yada, yada, yada. By the next week, kids were getting too frustrated about not being able to do the certain things that they wanted to do. I've had some kids that have, I posted this over on Blue Sky, some kids that actually just managed to, because of some bad rolls, completely overtake the Keep's military, and now I'm going to have to see what's going to happen this week with that. And while all in all that might seem kind of fun and everything funny as how that's happened, I can't help but constantly think that over and over and over again, this would have been so much easier had I just started this in something like Shadowdark or another game, basically. The high levels of crunch and everything like that that's gone into it is one factor of which I'd say I feel like the accessibility of this experience, as much as they want to say like there have been improvements, which there have, I just feel like I get a better, quicker, more easy to understand experience playing other games at this point. And I keep seeing this happen time and time and time again, where there doesn't really seem to be much restraint around the stuff that they're putting into the game. It seems like stuff is getting more bulked out rather than refined. Most recently with an Unearthed Arcana, this is the thing that kind of came across to me, was this way of, or what was a warrior of intoxication replacing the drunken master monk. As far as the name change goes, I don't know if it was because of clunkiness, because warrior of the drunken master seems odd. I don't know, maybe. But warrior of intoxication, immediately with the name, I was like, what? Okay, whatever. Like, it's a head scratcher. And then I see in it, it comes up with these like kind of hokey brews that mechanically, like the narrative of them just didn't really click for me. I saw another video here on YouTube by Bone Wizard where he kind of got into that as well, and I agree with a lot of his points there. With the content that they've been releasing, like, I mean, even in the Keep of the Borderlands thing, where there's one of the starter quests that you can get is you have to go and wrangle some goats or like some little sheeps and stuff. There's other ones in there where it just feels like this is so slice of life, and I'm like, I'm looking at these constantly as there were so many moments in here that this could have delivered on the promise of like a high action, high fun, high danger fantasy role-playing game, and yet it just doesn't. I was doing a review for this Heroes of the Borderlands starter set that I was going to do as a video, and I just stopped. I was like, I stopped with the script after writing about, I don't know, 5,000 words or something like that, and I was like, there's just so much to this that they just neutered. Now, I'm going to say that while also talking about how I think that in some cases they actually vastly improved the Caves of Chaos. The Caves of Chaos section, I think, narratively, the story of what's going on in there, they tied a lot of that stuff in that feels better, but still the end result doesn't really quite feel totally like it's delivering on all this like high energy, high action, well, this is the greatest role-playing game of all time experience or whatever. They're still trying to make an engine that is undeniably clunky work for delivering this fast-paced, fun, like whatever. If the thing that your game says on the 10 is like this is high fantasy action, and yet the stuff you keep putting out is this very feel-good, cozy, safe kind of an experience, there's just, you have to understand that there's a tonal dissonance, and there can be some customer dissatisfaction between what you're saying your game does and what your game is actually delivering. And I'm not saying that like I hate cute shit or anything like that. Look, if you want to play cute games and stuff like that, that's totally fine. But like, why is that the thing that's being delivered out of the current D&D sphere? It doesn't really click. I don't know. I've kind of hit this point though where I feel like I talk about this stuff and I kind of think that like, well, the way that people know me is for like, you know, D&D in the online sphere. And so if I say that like, well, I do Dungeons and Dragons content, or like, you know, I say, well, I do TTRPG content, there's this moment where people are like, oh, what do you mean by that? And I'm like, well, do you know about Dungeons and Dragons? And then suddenly it's associated with that over there. And it's like, well, that, but like other games instead. It's this whole thing. I'm lucky I'm in the point of where like I'm not, I was never really relying on YouTube as my income for any portion of where I've been doing YouTube, really. Honestly, I make the most of my revenue off of making TTRPG content. And now my game is the main source of my revenue. And I mean, I've made so much, honestly, at this point, not to brag, I'm just letting you know where I'm sitting right now, that like I could not do anything for a year and I'm still sitting pretty well. With everything that's gone on with Vagabond, the success that it's had, thanks, I mean, to, you know, Deficient Master's glowing review and other people pushing it out there in the scene, I don't really have to do D&D content. Like, that's not it. I'm not in a position where I have to pay my bills making D&D content at this point in order to fund my other projects or whatever. Those other projects are now paying over 99.9% of all my living expenses right now. I'm grateful to be in this position, but yeah, just letting you know kind of where I'm sitting. Now, but overwhelmingly, the thing that's going to happen in the TTRPG sphere is that D&D dominates the discourse, okay? Overwhelmingly, that's just the way that it is. And I kind of feel like at this point, because I'm in the TTRPG sphere, I kind of have to talk about it every once in a while. And whenever I do, I can't help but just sort of feel this same feeling of like, why, like, how do I put it? I feel like whenever I comment on it, it's like I'm picking on them. I feel like whenever I comment on it, it's like I'm almost just saying like, God, you guys, like this, don't we know that this is like a little bit cringy here? Like if you wanted to do the cozy core thing, that's all you, right? But like if you're telling me like, oh, I'm going to get a dragon adventure and then I go and buy this thing and then I'm feeling like, oh, why do you have me going around and finding livestock or what the hell? Like it's strange. You know, it's really strange. It's again, this tonal dissonance where I just don't really feel like I need to continue on talking about it anymore. I guess that's kind of the way that I felt about the system at this point is like there's so many mechanics that it feels like they're making the game intentionally cluttered to force you to use a digital tool set and like buy into their subscription model. For as much as they want to say that they've like increased the accessibility of the game, sure, I guess that's true with an asterisk. The accessibility of the game I don't think should be tied into a digital tool set that you paywall, right? Even if there is a somewhat free-ish version of the thing, I'm not really seeing that as increasing the accessibility. And whenever the starter kit that you put out doesn't really play like the game itself, you know, there is the TTRPG, I guess, quote-unquote, experience in there, but I don't really feel like my players are getting better at playing D&D or, like, learning to play D&D by playing this starter set. That's a critique, I guess, like, I would say I could get into, but, like, in all honesty, it just comes down to that experience not really feeling like a D&D experience. It's, I don't know. Kind of felt this for a little bit now. Of course, D&D, you know, like I was saying, it does dominate the landscape of the TTRPG industry and like kind of what all we talk about. But I have felt this like I see Wizards of the Coast making content that like apparently they want to make, you know, and like it feels very safe, very cozy core. You know, I've heard people online say like, oh, this is woke. And it's like, I don't know. Why are we saying that it's woke? Because there's black people in a what was traditionally a Eurocentric fantasy setting. Like D&D is setting agnostic for the most part. There's setting guides that you can pick up that like do XYZ thing or what the fuck ever. But like, good God, if everything's going to be this culture war fight, I'm sick of that discourse too. I'm fucking sick of that too. Look, the way that I see it is if you don't like the thing, then stop talking about the thing, right? Or stop it. Like you're not really part of D&D as the hobby if you're like, if you don't like the D&D game, I guess. And if D&D is what they're putting out now, then I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, all right, I guess I don't comment on this stuff anymore because I should just abandon and move on to the other pastures, right? Basically, that's what I've done. I've run D&D for this after school club, but like that's about the only time in my life that I ever really engage with D&D, like, you know, 5th edition 2024 or what the hell ever you want to call it. I feel like this whole thing has been handled extremely poorly by Wizards of the Coast. And I don't think anyone's really going to disagree with that. With the cancellation of Sigil, basically the entire senior staff of their creative team leaving for one of their now kind of bigger competitors at this point. I don't know. I don't really see much of any interest going on, like much of any real, like genuine enthusiasm for new releases. People seem more interested to talk about other games, at least in some of the spheres that I'm in. It's strange. It's a weird time to be a dungeon tuber, I guess is the way to put it. And it's not like this is me leaving the TTRPG scene. I'm still going to PAX, actually. First time I'm going to be going this year, so that's going to be a shitload of fun. And the entire time I'm there, I don't really plan on playing D&D much at all. I'm running Vagabond for a few influencers. And Rook and the Crook. I thought I actually had that zine right here ready to go. But basically, like, I have every once in a while kind of interjected and looked at like an Unearthed Arcana. I thought that the Scion was actually looking pretty slick. You know, there were times where it was like hit or miss, but way more miss than hit. And then whenever I saw this recent Unearthed Arcana, I was just like, God, I couldn't help it. I felt like I was bullying them a little bit by like how much I was looking at this, just like, what the, like, how after 10 years are there still core issues in which they are just completely ignoring and not giving any explanation as to why? That's a very strange thing. I've never understood why Wizards of the Coast has always just chosen to ignore the critiques of the community and not really address them directly. They do every once in a while, but like in an Unearthed Arcana seems like the perfect place to acknowledge that you've heard the feedback through and you're going to explain why certain things work the way that they do. Another thing that I kind of get is like, well, I do and I don't get. As somebody that's printed my own stuff, offset print, done all the big, international shipping, logistics, and all that stuff, hey, I 100% understand project deadlines. I 100% understand, like, hey, production's got to go through. But it feels like everything is just being absolutely forced through without any kind of engagement or real back and forth about why the things are kind of the way that they are. I don't know. It's extremely strange. Whatever they wanted D&D to be, it is becoming that. And, like, to me, this whole angle of, like, everything feels, whenever I say extremely cozy, I mean, like, they keep making stuff, the artwork they keep putting in is like, oh, it's this cute aesthetic or this, like, very slice of life aesthetic rather than, like, high action, high energy or whatever. Yeah. There's some of the pieces that are great. I remember seeing the cover of the Caves of Chaos and thinking, like, wow, this piece is actually really sick. I like the way that they did this, And then I see the Keep, and it's like, wow, there's maybe 3 quests that are in here that I'm like, this feels like an actual fantasy quest, and the rest of this feels like I am going around running fucking errands. I think at this point, like, I've got to recognize that I kind of feel as though I'm just sort of picking on this design team, and there's so many other things that I feel way more excited about. And I think it's just, I've kind of hit a point in my life, like I have with other games in the past. I kind of feel like I've hit that same spot because the online discourse, especially around TTRPGs and, well, especially around D&D in particular, has just gotten to be like, anyone who disagrees with me is a fucking hater, and apparently they have a bias on their shoulders. Or if you say anything positive about Wizards of the Coast, people are like, you're a fucking shill. The people that act like that and people that say that stuff, I'm sorry, like, you gotta move on. Like, you've got to find a different kind of interjection there. I have seen so many sides of industry scandal and drama and everything over the last 6 years I've been doing YouTube stuff. 5 years, I guess. Yeah, 5-ish years that I've been doing TTRPG YouTube. And I don't want to do that chase. I don't want to do any of the WotC coverage at this point anymore because, like, I'm just exhausted. It's like there is I think you just have to reach a point where you have to recognize whether or not something that is a core part of your life is making you happy or if it's just injecting more misery. And if that thing is not giving you the happy to fill the, like, misery puddle you got to deal with every once in a while, something's got to go. And my cup fucking overfloweth with misery for this new D&D edition. And just WotC's, like, at times, just insufferable tone when it comes to making content. Yeah, I don't know. And it's like, if you go to bat for Wizards of the Coast for everything that they're putting out at this point, they're going to just show you next week there's going to be a whole nother controversy that's going to blow up. People are going to be like, this is going to be the end of Wizards of the Coast. All the drama bait stuff is going to happen. And then people are going to fucking forget about it in 2 weeks whenever a new Magic the Gathering edition drops. Or a new D&D book that people are just, like, absolutely cocaine addicted to the smell of fucking paper on their shelves. I don't know, brother, but for me, that ain't it. So I think that this is just the time that I decide, like, hey, I sever the D&D arm of what is the Land of the Blind and Indestructoboy content. This has felt very strange. It's felt like a very weird time. I think that some people really hold on to the traditions of D&D, thinking that hopefully they'll be able to change Wizards of the Coast mindset and maybe think that, yes, there will be a time where D&D will be that dungeon crawler game that we always really wanted. But instead, it feels like they're going so much more in this theater kid, very narrative heavy, very like we have to explore the emotions of these characters and yada yada. And it's like, holy shit, let that stuff emerge at the table naturally. And like, I don't know, man. This isn't some kind of criticism about like, no, I notice at no point, except for right now, did I say that this means like I'm tired of like wokeism or whatever. People have to define what the fuck that means or they gotta stop saying it. It's so obnoxious. I'm not saying that this is quote unquote woke. I'm saying that this is this obnoxiously twee, comfy core shit that I think Wizards of the Coast is being forced to make for this game that promises, like I said, dangerous, high fantasy elements of like, I mean, crazy spells. There should be, I mean, castle sieges and crazy fights, sword and board fantasy. And yet it's just not hitting the vibe, man. That's it. It's got nothing to do with the political adjacency or anything like that. It all straight up has to do with the fact of everything that they keep putting out just feels obnoxious. This could be old man shakes his fist at clouds, but let me know what you all think down in the comment section below. I'm going to go on to continuing to make content for other stuff because that's a shitload of fun. And I'm way more excited to make weird adventures for other games where I feel like I actually play a hero. Yeah. Anyways, hope you all have a good one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Go buy Vagabond. I don't know. See ya.